Every day, more and more people are making movies. Filmmaking has become the new garage band. I'm Johnny DiLoretto, and this is Framelines, the series that aims the lens on those who are out there making movies.
Framelines is brought to you in part by the Greater Columbus Arts Council.
Our featured filmmaker this week is Danny Rogers, a prolific young filmmaker with a passion for making great images with the camera in narrative films and music videos.
I've always wanted to be a filmmaker, ever since I was a kid. In fact, I think my mom I was trying to go music route, and my mom was always like, that's not right. And when I finally started moving this direction, they were like, this is what we always, hoped you would do. So I kind of started screenwriting when I was a young kid, but didn't really get serious about it until about 6 years ago. The thing that I first kind of started off with was was like music videos. I actually worked at a studio that did music videos, so I was always on set, like as a PA, working on like music videos and sometimes infomercials and commercials. Then I kind of started traveling around to like New York and Virginia and stuff like that, kind of picking up PA work as I was going along. I was an alarm technician, so I was kind of in different places, so I figured I'd just jump on crews so I can learn more and more. But then when I kind of started getting personal about it, the first like film that I actually directed was for the 48 in Virginia Beach, called She's Your Lover Now. And that was kind of where I got the bug. I was like, okay, I think I got this directing thing figured out, and I really love working with the camera. So as far as style, I think it's more of an inspiration thing. Whatever I feel inspired by, as far as like people I see and stuff like that, like I just kind of try to mold that into what I'm doing and kind of keeping things fresh. I can honestly say almost every project I've ever worked on looks completely different. From like Simple Moves in New York, which was shot very shoulder rig documentary style, where the enemies you keep was very stilted dolly style, steady cams and stuff like that. Okay, so I actually grew up in Ohio, in Sydney, Ohio. Eventually, I was kind of a DJ, so I lived in Dayton and Cincinnati, then Columbus, and I kind of fell in love with Columbus. Our main focus is music videos. That's the music obviously is where we all kind of come from, so that's what we've put our most focus on, not to mention we know so many musicians, so they always need videos. So, but then also kind of second to that would be commercials and event coverage, and then when we get a chance, we love our narrative films, which hopefully that's going to be our main focus. That artist was from Sweden, and he actually contacted us from Sweden through somebody, and he did pay us. There was a budget there, not a big budget, but as far as like making money, it is possible. It just essentially comes down to meeting the right people, but also just going really hard and being really ambitious with everything you do. Even if you got a small budget, go for it. The idea that you first have that you really, really, really wanted to do, just do it. Don't let the budget be a constraint, and eventually the budgets just kind of get bigger and bigger. I just shot a feature film for Jim Leo, who is a wonderful director to work with. Quite a few people around here have worked with him, and he's just a lot of fun to be with. It was called Dark Fate, which is a psychological thriller about a lawyer who is framed for a murder, and he's trying to atone his crime. But a lot of really interesting things happen along the way.
Why did you come to my office tonight?
I need you to do a job.
A job?
Murder.
You want me to murder somebody? No way. I'm not a killer.
You were gonna kill me, but you stopped. You realized by killing me, you'd be killing yourself. It's funny how we all have such noble intentions, but when the heat is on, everyone just saves their own ass. His name is Robert Griggs. Thursday at 9 o'clock, he'll be eating dinner at the Wooden Fox. When he is done, you'll follow him to his car. And when you get there, you will shoot. One time, close range, directly in the heart.
The production went very well, actually. We could only shoot on the weekends, and I think that was kind of the biggest challenge for all of us because I actually came out here to do that. So during the weeks, I was obviously focusing on other projects, but that was our biggest challenge. We had to shoot Saturday and Sunday, and we had to try to get a feature film done. So it took us about 2 months, and it went great. I mean, everybody just kind of chipped in. We had a very small crew, and just had really good PAs and ACs, and just people showing up to help out within the local community, which that's my favorite part about working in Columbus is how people will just, chip in equipment like with what you guys did, as well as just kind of donate some time here and there. And I just feel all around that project went really well, and everybody is really happy with the end product. Shooting in Columbus is an amazing experience. Even though the money isn't there, people really people will go in all the way. Getting locations is always such an easy thing because it seems like so many people want something shot. And what doesn't look awesome when your store is in a feature film that was done by a local filmmaker, no matter where it goes after that. So local businesses really kind of latch onto that, which is one of the biggest hurdles in making a film is getting locations. And typically most people will let you come in there and shoot for free as long as you kind of follow their rules. Another thing that's great is that people will show up, and there are a lot of talented people out here. So they'll just show up and actually donate their time, and you'll wind up, no matter how much you think you know about filmmaking, somebody's gonna show up and they're gonna know just a few more things, and it's gonna add to your knowledge, which is great. Everybody's always really willing to share information and just kind of be there for each other, as long as you're there for them. So that's the biggest part about Columbus filmmaking that I think is the most valuable, is just the people that come out here and the talent that is willing to lend their time. Is do it. Just do it. If it takes, take a camera, and if you don't even have a story, go shoot something, go edit it, put it together. The more you do, the closer you'll get to doing what you really want to do.
We got cameras behind the scenes of Bob Bates' latest movie.
They released me over an hour ago. What, did you forget?
You spent 7 years in jail. What's another hour? You got someplace to be?
Right. Where's Normie?
Home. He's got another stomach ache.
Another? Did you take him to the hospital?
What for? It's just a stomach ache. Right.
I had not been planning on participating in the Winter Film Competition, just was busy with corporate stuff and doing my own thing. I got a call out of the blue from an actor-producer who I knew slightly from MOFA meetings, John Newkirk. John was putting together a team. He was very gung-ho on being part of the Winter Film Competition with SOFA. He flattered me by asking me if I wanted to direct this project. It was actually a first for me. No one had ever approached me and said, "Hey Bob, would you direct a project I'm producing?" So that was fun. That was very flattering and a very cool thing to have happen to me. So he had assembled really what he called a dream team, and it was a great honor to be a part of that dream team of John's. John approached Vidas Barzdoukas to write the story, write the shooting script. Vidas brought in Brian Michael Block as kind of a creative sounding board. We had some sessions around the table at Panera Bread, and then I believe a bar where adult beverages were served, and we kicked around some ideas. Obviously we knew it had to be centered around the theme of cold. The theme of brotherly love ended up being kind of the core, the heart of the story. We had a lot of fun with it. When Vidas delivered that first draft of his script, I really got jazzed, and I could see the movie in my head just from Vitis's pages, and got really excited. Strong, very strong story, and very ambitious in terms of what it demanded of the cast. This was not, these were not easy roles to portray. We initially planned a 3-day shoot, a very ambitious schedule for a challenging shooting script, lots of locations, a couple of pretty lengthy dialogue scenes, which would require a lot of time, shooting time. We ended up trying to pack too much into our third day, a Sunday. It did get to be challenging. I could see before we were finished with the shoot that Sunday, we were getting through a 4-page dialogue scene in one location in a house, and then we had like a 2-page dialogue scene to bang out after doing other things in the morning that Sunday. We then got to the stage where, you know what, guys, we've got this other location to go to. We're going to be late into the night. What do we do? So John and his producers just rallied the troops and said, "Come on, guys, let's really push through and get this thing done." We get to what was to be our final location of our final day. It was probably the coldest day of all winter, as far as I know. It was windy. We get there. It was at an exterior location, no AC. We had generators. It was so cold that the generators would not work. So we were completely hosed. We had to regroup. We were all cold, tired, and just packed it in and said, we'll figure this out later. Up until that point, I have to say the shoot went well, went very well. It was an ambitious shoot, but it went well. Up until the generators failed for the final exteriors. As it happened, though, I think that was a blessing, because what it meant was we had to regroup. I came up with an alternate location, which is actually more convenient for most of us, closer to Columbus, and it was wired for electricity. It gave us the same exterior looks we wanted. Because I'd had time between the first wrap and this additional shoot, I was able to get together with a storyboard artist, Doug McGuire. Doug McGuire and I storyboarded the last sequence we were shooting, which also happens to be the last sequence in the film. That was, for a director, was just pure joy to sit down with a storyboard artist. This was great, though, to be able to think through your shots, think through your coverage. It allows you to do things as a director you can't do any other way, in my opinion. I had my storyboards. We literally shot the boards because it just turned out, you know what, I felt, as director, this is the best way to shoot the scene. We had a ball. We took our time, and as a result, it was a luxury schedule. We got performances. Actors were really pleased with what they did. I was really pleased. I took my time with the actors and really coached them and molded their performances. And as a director, I just had a ball. The finished film that we turned in for the competition is a strong piece. As we all know in this business, a film is never completed, it's abandoned. We all wish, oh, I wish I could have done this and tweaked that. I have to salute the entire team. This was a real labor of love for everyone. Everyone just gave it their all. I'm very proud of what we did. I'm very proud of the finished film, and I'm grateful that Mr. Newkirk asked me to direct it. It was just a great experience for all of us, and I think we all walked away from this feeling proud and made some new friends and learned a lot about filmmaking that otherwise we never would have learned, and we're ready for our next adventure.
Peter John Ross breaks down a movie-making technique right now.
Motion picture editing is sometimes called the invisible art. An L-cut, also called split edit, is a device in editing that helps make going from one shot to another almost unnoticeable. If we edit a scene and only show the people who are talking, then the audience misses half the story, like this.
Code blue, room 305.
Oh, here's the doctor.
The results from your test came back, and I have some bad news for you.
When is it?
You have a bronchial carcinoma.
What is that?
That's lung cancer. and I can refer you to an oncologist. You can discuss some treatment options.
No. No, that's not possible. I came in for a cough I've had for a couple of weeks.
I'm sorry.
All doctors to the ER.
Only showing the people talking is just too jarring. We want to see the character's reaction to what's being said to them. When we use L-cuts, the edits become more seamless because the audio or visual continued over the next shot. Psychologically, the viewer can fill in the blank of what the character speaking looks like after you cut to the person listening mid-sentence. Here is a scene with L-cuts.
Code blue, room 305.
Here's the doctor.
The results from your test came back, and I have some bad news for you.
What is it?
You have a bronchial carcinoma.
What is that?
That's lung cancer. And I can refer you to an oncologist. You can discuss some treatment options.
No. No, that's not possible. I came in for a cough I've had for a couple of weeks.
I'm sorry.
All doctors to the ER.
It's called an L-cut because in the software on the timeline, it forms an L shape between the two clips. Reactions are half the story. A character's nonverbal responses sometimes relay more of the emotion than the dialogue.
Peter John Ross hosts a roundtable with filmmakers, like a film festival panel in your living room.
Each one of you works professionally in kind of film and video production outside of independent film. What's the main difference you know of between shooting for like a commercial versus an indie film?
Well, I think in an indie film, they're hiring you as a cinematographer to create a look. And so you have a little more control. And they're trusting you because you're part of the storytelling process. So hopefully you sit with the director and you say, hey, we want this kind of style, we want this. Where corporate stuff, it's your sometimes handcuffed by the client saying, I want this. And like, well, that's really not serving what maybe I feel, but you basically have to say yes and nod your head. And sometimes you get good clients, sometimes you get, I don't want to say bad clients, they're just not knowledgeable about the technology and what you can do and how to take it above just bland TV news look.
So what's the appeal for going from what you do for a living and then turning it into kind of narrative storytelling for fun? How do you differentiate those two worlds for yourself?
For me?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question. I still take the same approach, but sometimes I have more input on something where, not always, even if it's a no budget, some people are pretty strong on what they want and you're there still to execute. You know, it's not like, there's collaboration, but from commercial to indie, a commercial you're getting, a certain pay scale probably, but you are pleasing the masses at that point. So you generally would want to take the middle of the road, in your lighting approach, your color approach, your camera operation. But the minute you go indie, well, back to what we were talking about earlier, now maybe I'm going to throw a GoPro in there, I'm going to try to do a drone, I may do some handheld, I might go to the Dana Dolly. Those are all kinds of things that I can interject into the project where on a commercial there may not be time, or an agency is probably not going to put up with it. They might like it for a second, but...
So you feel like some of the restraints are not as tight?
Yeah, no, they're not. No. Yeah.
What about you, Mike?
Well, I think it's probably true of all of us that what we do for a living doesn't feel like a job. So a lot of the more narrative projects that we do, independent films usually have a very low budget, if a budget whatsoever. So it's an ability for us to do what we do, where people tell us what to do, versus doing it for fun. And I literally love what I do. So being able to do it in a narrative fashion where we have a little bit more flexibility and not exactly told what to do, and you don't actually have the pressure of a budget weighing down on you is kind of it's kind of nice.
So the next thing would be, the role of director and cinematographer on independent films. How do you feel the relationship, what would be your definition of the relationship between cinematographer and director on an indie film?
It changes a lot, and on an independent film, it's the director's role to make sure that his or her vision is, specifically on the shoot, is that vision is coming through the sensor of the camera. So that will end at the technical aspects that the director of photography needs to take over and make the decisions, the technical decisions of where we want lights to be, the composition of the shot, those types of things.
Same for you, Greg. How do you feel the role of cinematographer is with the director on an indie film?
Well, it varies, obviously, from director to director. So it really comes down to experience level of a director, and you give them the respect that they deserve. If they're struggling, if you step in and try to help, and that may just mean being able to explain marks or camera angles. I tend to have to help a lot with camera angles and coverage. Some directors just want to focus on actors' performance, and that's fine with me. If that's all they want to do, I'll help them with the rest. If they want to pick the angles, then I'll collab with it. I generally don't like when directors get into actual millimeters of lenses and tell me to change the lens from here to here to here to here. It's kind of getting in my world, and I was like, well, then here's the camera, So
why did they hire you?
Yeah. I mean, so I'll help as much as they need, but when it comes to the technical side of the camera and what the camera, how I achieve those technical aspects, I want, I need to stay in charge of that, and that's the core of a cinematographer.
Same for you, Scott.
I've worked the gamut of directors who had a finite. They had a vision, and they're not quite calling lenses, but they're calling the angles and with close up tight. And I've worked to where it's like, well, do whatever you want. How would I'll say, let's throw it on the dolly. I love it. Let's do this angle. I love it. And I like somewhere in the middle where they're not micromanaging, but they also have a vision, because it does get tiring. I've been on movies where the director had basically a nervous breakdown on the first day of the shoot, and all they did is say action and cut. And so I was like, holy crap, I'm directing the movie and lighting it. And at that point, I can't do both those jobs that well. So I want somebody who's got some kind of vision, say, this is kind of the coverage, and then I'll suggest ways to augment that. It's like, hey, if you dollied in at this point, it would really bring up the drama. But don't do it. Don't just move the camera for no reason. But so it's a collaboration, and it should take place before you shoot. You should have long talks about looks and share, hey, go check out this movie for this scene or that. These are what I'm looking for. And then once you get to the set, you refine that, and hopefully if it's a feature, by day or 2 or 3, you've got your collaboration, you've got your shorthand. And I've worked with the same director on 7 features. We don't talk at all anymore. We just like, hey, what about this? He goes, yeah, go. So that's fun. But yeah, it's always fun to shoot a feature and work with different directors.
Let's check out another short take.
This is a little tip that may seem like common sense, but I've seen it broken many times on a set, and sometimes with disastrous consequences. Whenever you get into a case on set, you should do one of 2 things. 1, leave the lid open so that people can see that the lid is not secure before they move it. Or 2, if you open a case, take something out, you close it, and you latch the lid. I've seen people close the lid on a case and not latch it. Then somebody comes along and grabs the case to move it, and the lid flies open, spewing the contents all over the ground onto your set. If you're dealing with a case of lenses that cost like $5,000 and up, you could have some serious damage very quickly. So please follow the simple rule. Leave it open or close it and latch it.
And now let's look at cliches in movies.
I have an issue with movies. Some of the cliches that pop up every now and then just bug me. For example, in sci-fi movies, when we are in space and something explodes, it creates a big fireball and loud, noisy explosion. It creates a blast radius that everyone can see and that we all need to get away from, even though in space sound waves don't travel and fires burn very dimly. Here's what Hollywood would have it look like. Here's what it would really look like. Now, I will admit that it looks a lot prettier with all the sound and fire and... But the science nerd in me just can't let it slip by unnoticed.
Auguste and Louis Lumière were photographers in France that saw Thomas Edison's kinetoscope in Paris in 1894, and they innovated on that idea. The kinetoscope could only show a movie to one person at a time. The Lumière brothers created the cinematograph, which could project the moving images on a large screen for a group of people. What the Lumière brothers did in 1895 is basically the exact same experience that every single cinema has today.
If you'd like more information on the filmmakers or to purchase a DVD of tonight's program, please visit Framelines.tv. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. That's it for this show. We'll catch you next time on Framelines.